Finances and the real struggles. This is part 2 of 4 for You Want to Be a Guide. So you went through video 1, part 1, whatever you want to call it, and you said, you know what, Jason, I believe I have the traits. I believe that I am willing to make those sacrifices. I'm aware of them. My family's on board, and I've got the drive. I'm ready to do this. Well, congratulations. You're about easily 60% of the way, halfway to 60% of the way, in my opinion. So I think what we're going to dive into next is probably going to be underappreciated in the aspect of how does the community look at our job. And from the outside looking in, I was once upon a time in that boat. I looked at it as they're making $500 to $700 a day. If I work 100 days out of the year, that's 50 to 70K. I can live on that easy. And I really can. But, the operative word is but. Your overhead and costs are a lot more than you think. This is coming from an individual that has reviewed and looked at P&L statements for over a decade. I left the job where I was in charge of that, 2 jobs in charge of that, really, of operating and maintaining budgets. And going from making over $100,000 a year to grossing significantly less, you need to be okay with. I'll be straightforward. Most guys live paycheck to paycheck. You need to have an understanding of maybe why are they living that life, or what is not enabling them to make it. Now, myself, I'm 100% okay with the change that I made in my life, and that change in pay, which a lot of people would struggle with. I'm on a divinely inspired path. My Lord and Savior Jesus Christ saved my life and put me on this direction. Not everybody's in that same boat. So, with that being said, why are we seeing such a vast difference between that netting and grossing? Let's talk about the overhead, and let's talk about some of the costs that are associated with guiding. So what I found and what I see and observe, and guilty in some manners myself, to our habits and how we're spending money. Now, what I see, what I observe a lot, is I observe a lot of guides that will head to the bar after they're done. They gamble, they smoke, they chew, they drink, the fast food junkies. They blow a lot of money on their habits. I have my own habits. I am a fan of tackle. I love tackle. I love working with different variants of rods and fishing rods and different crankbaits and different jigs and different plastics and working in that aspect, trying to find that magical unicorn that's out there like we all do. I've really toned that back a lot over the last few years. And my business plan going into this, that's huge, by the way. Develop and follow a business plan. If you do not have an accountant, get one. Get a good accountant. Interview accountants. Not even a joke. I interviewed accountants until I found the one I have. She lives over 2 hours away. How I determined it was going to be her is an insane story, but I tell you what, this lady is a straight shot. She's amazing. I wouldn't change her for anything. I just sent her an email yesterday on, hey, this is what my projections are and what I'm thinking for 2026. Do you have any advice or any guidelines? You need to have an accountant that you can rely on. And they're going to help you with a business plan and potentially might even help set you up a budget. You're not to pay for it, but I tell you what, it's worth every penny. It really is. So what you need to do and what you need to figure out outside of getting a good accountant and setting up that budget, having a dynamic business plan that has a structure or guideline laid out for you, is you need to shape it up and harness in on those habits and tuck those habits in just a lot tighter than what they are. Figure out how to budget that in or manage it differently. Avoiding gas station food, believe it or not, is a huge one. It's probably one of my hardest habits that I've really had to changed over the last 2 years. I'm running so darn hard that in the beginning of the season, I do really well on meal prep until 4th of July hits, and then I've got a straight month and a half to 2.5, maybe even 3 months of just eating garbage food. This is the lightest year I've ever come out of a guiding season. I just got out of the guiding season a few weeks ago. And this year I only gained about 10 pounds, which is remarkable. My heaviest I gained 15 to 20 pounds. Now 15 was pretty normal, it seemed, out of the 5 years that I've done this so far. So finding a way to curve that for me has been one of my largest challenges. And that in itself is not healthy for you. So we all have our guilty pleasures and we all have our things that we fight. Let's talk about fuel costs. This year here, thankfully this year here I was a little less, not a lot, but I was a little less. The year before this, my fuel bill was $15,000 at the end of the year, and that's what I ran through. Did I take that money that I had ahead of time and set that aside? I'm real thankful I did, I can tell you that. That $15,000 bill, when you receive it at the end of the season, though, it does not feel good. That stings. You just watch that bank account you worked so hard for drop by 15 grand just for fuel. Holy smokes. In addition to fuel, let's talk about the what ifs. What if the weather is inclement? We have inclement weather and you can't go out. Are you okay missing that trip? Did you think about that? Did you leave room in your schedule to possibly push them later? I'm a guy who will book multiple trips in a day. I have zero. In fact, I prefer that. If I can get 3 trips in a day, I do it. A lot of days I can get 2 in a day. Now, so your trip spacing in between those, that's something you're going to have to figure out. I use 2 hours between every trip. So anyway, back to finances. What if you have something that broke during the day? What if you have a boat repair? What happens if you smack a rock with your boat and you're out for a week? I've been there. I actually rented a boat. That was my solution. I went and rented somebody else's boat, and then I ran that boat, and then I paid them a rental charge. Now all of a sudden, instead of making $500 to $700 on that trip, now I got the rental fee in it, knocked right off that. Now just getting smaller and smaller. How much am I really making then? Is it worth me running for the day? Am I running 8 hours for $75 on the day is what I'm going to end up profiting? Is a chance at wrecking that individual's boat worth it? Or damaging that boat or vessel? Is it worth your time? These are things you need to figure out. Vehicle repair. What if I can't get the boat to the water? What if I can't get to my boat because my boat's docked? What happens if I need to replace broken rods? Lost tackle. Crankbaits are $10 a piece for cheap ones. Some of them are more expensive. My muskie baits, some of those muskie baits are over $100 a piece. What happens if a client loses it? Now, some guys will turn around and charge for lost tackle. That's a business strategy you can put inside of your business plan. These are things you need to start thinking about. What about a sick day? Can you have a sick day? If you got the flu, are you going to stay home on the couch? If you got a cold, sniffles, you going to stay home instead of getting out and making money? What kind of personality do you have with that? Are you a crybaby? What about broken bones? 2023. I guided half the season with broken ribs. No joke. Broken ribs right here. Half the season. Imagine hitting 3 to 5 foot waves with broken ribs. I did it. 100%. August, September, October. What are you going to do? Are you going to be out there? Are you going to find an excuse, say back? Well, if you do, how are you going to make up the financial difference? You see where I'm kind of starting to drive with this, right? Let's talk about healthcare. Do you have a healthcare plan? I'm very thankful. I'm married, got a beautiful wife, and I'm able to ride underneath her healthcare plans. She takes care of that. What are you going to do, especially you single guys? That's a thought process, right? What about fishing on your day off? I know a lot of guys that do that. They fish on their days off. That's more money out. I used to. This last year here, I did not. If I did not have a trip, my boat did not get wet. Now, thankfully, I only had about 2 to 3 days of the entire season that I worked where I wanted to work and I didn't have a booking. All my other time was scheduled off. I was very, very, like I said earlier in the last video, I'm very blessed. Very, very fortunate with my business has progressively gotten better and better every year to the point now where I don't shove money into advertising. Oh, advertising, money, finances, yeah. What about advertising? How are you going to turn around and get those trips? Word of mouth is by far the best. But how do you get to that point of word of mouth like I'm at now? 3 years. That's what I was told by all the older guides that I made phone calls to when I first started and said, hey, what are some tips, tricks? What should I expect? What should I see? Every one of them said it's about 3 years before you start seeing repeat business. And I would tell them they're spot on. I had a couple right after the first year, which is great. And then slowly over time, that snowball started building to the point where not only did I get my repeats, but I was getting referrals from other customers, and that's what built my business, is referrals. My business is primarily built off referrals. I'm very, very thankful for that. And I'm thankful for every one of you out there that helped get me to this point, because I couldn't do it without you. You people are amazing, so thank you for that. Another thought process. What about a boat payment? I did not have a boat payment for my first 4 years, 4 seasons. Technically 3.5 seasons, because I did pick up a boat halfway through my at the end of my 3rd season. So I had the 4th and 5th season. I made two payments on it so far. I make annual payments. So do you have a boat payment that you need to schedule in? How much is that going to take? On average, what I had figured out is you need about 40 trips to pay for the boat loan in itself on average, as well as to cover insurance. Insurance is more money. My insurance is quite ridiculous because I have 2 boats on it. I've got another guide that's on it, myself. I've got property. And there's a lot to it. I have to have professional insurance for my teaching. That's another tidbit that's tacked on there. What about retirement? Oh, let me bounce back. Let's talk about trucks. You see these guys pulling up to the boat launches with brand new trucks and brand new boats. I personally have no idea how they're affording that, other than that they either started with a lot of money or they owe somebody a lot of money. It's got to be one of the two, because I know what a typical guide makes. Now, there are some exceptions. There are some guides that do extremely well that are pushing at 6 figures a year. And typically they have a vast fleet of guides that are working for them. And they are also making a substantial amount per day off of that guide. Whether their guides figure that out or not, it's up to them. Some of them eventually break away and go off on their own and start finding some of the other struggles that maybe they didn't realize the other guide had. But either way, and we see that down in Florida. I see that up in Alaska, the Great Lakes. There's a lot of guides that are doing that in those different areas. Now, a truck. So I run a 2006 truck. It's got 109,000 miles on it where it sits right now. The beginning of this year, I pulled up to the boat landing to meet some guys. They showed up early, which is a rarity. They showed up early. I was backing in, and they came down and hopped in my boat. And the guy looks at me and says, "I'm glad to see you got your priorities right." And I was puzzled, and I said, "I'm not sure I follow you or understand what you mean. Can you elaborate?" He goes, "Well, look at your truck and look at the boat." He goes, "All your money's in the boat, not in the truck." And if you don't think people notice what you have going on, you need to open up your eyes. But having a truck payment and a boat payment would be a very, very tough thing to do in this industry. What about your backup plan? Do you have a solid backup plan? What if things fall apart? What if your bookings don't come through? What are you going to do to make that extra money? I would advise having a good financial backup plan, whether it's a side hustle somewhere else or so on and so forth. I do 4 different things in my current situation just to make sure that I'm okay and I've got enough to be sufficient as well as feed my family. And the last thing I really want to hit on is retirement. How many fishing guides you know that have a retirement plan or are setting up for retirement? I tell my clients that the only way I'm going to retire is when I'm wearing a toe tag sitting on a stainless table with a cloth over top of me. Now, is that true? No, it's really not. I am working progressively on establishing back into the retirement I've already had saved up thus far. But as you're going into it, I would strongly advise that you start coming up with a retirement plan if you're able to. And that's the big hinge, right? If you're able to. That's how tight things can be. Now, I'm talking about how things can be tight, correct? There's got to be a perk, otherwise nobody would do it. And that's our lifestyle. Our lifestyle is beyond unbelievable. It really is. What we get to do day in and day out, our lifestyle is crazy amazing. We just don't have the same financial freedom as somebody that might make more in a different industry. So you need to weigh out some of that, and you know what, I'm pretty darn serious when I say that's almost it, is that lifestyle. You're doing what you love, and if you've got family that's going to support you and do it, and you're okay, and you come up with a good business plan and you think you can make it work, who am I to stop you from doing it? But there are a lot of things you need to consider. Finances are very, very important. There's realizations with it, and once again, we deal right back into what? Sacrifices. And you need to have the willingness to be able to fight through sickness. You have to have the willingness to fight through habits that you have and understand, how can I set myself up for success? A good accountant's a great way to start. And just talk to some seasoned guides that you actually trust in your local area. If you're working out on the ocean, you might be able to gross a lot more than somebody that's working inland like I am. The difference between working in different areas has huge financial swings, seasons, regulations, so on and so forth. You need to look in your area. That's something I'm not going to know, but that should help pull in information to help you determine whether or not it's a good idea. So thanks for tuning in. We will see you for part 3, customer experience, next week. Be financially responsible.